There was once a boy named Arav. He was kind, soft-spoken, and always smiling. He stood at 5 feet 4 inches, shorter than most boys his age. He didn't mind much, though. His world was quiet. Books, art, music, and a few friends kept him content. He didn't like the spotlight, and he didn't chase attention. He believed life would flow its own way, and he would quietly follow. In the same city lived a girl named Meera. She was tall, 6 feet 6 inches. Her presence was impossible to miss. Wherever she went, heads turned. Her long stride, confident voice, and towering figure always made people stop and stare. Some admired her, others whispered. Some laughed behind her back. She pretended she didn't hear, but she did. Meera was used to being stared at, asked strange questions, and receiving backhanded compliments. "You must have played basketball," they would say, or "How do you find shoes your size?" She'd smile and walk away. It had been like this since she was 13. She had grown fast, and faster than all the boys in her class. They used to make fun of her. Then they grew silent. Then they disappeared. She didn't hate her height, not anymore. But she did feel lonely. Arav and Meera didn't meet in a fairy tale way. No dramatic bump in a crowded hallway. No magical moment under the rain. They met at a library. Arav was reading poetry in a quiet corner. Meera walked in, looking for a book on architecture. The tall shelves made it hard for most people to reach the top row. But for Meera, it was easy. She spotted a book someone had left on the top shelf, out of place. Without thinking, she picked it and placed it back in its spot. Arav saw her and smiled. "You just saved someone from climbing on a chair," he said, half joking.
She looked at him and smiled back. "Perks of being tall," she said. He introduced himself. She introduced herself, too. They talked, slowly, softly, politely. Then Meera sat down and asked what he was reading. It was a poem about solitude. Arav read it aloud. Meera listened. Her eyes didn't blink much. He had a warm voice, calm, and something in his words made her forget she was tall, made her forget how everyone else usually looked at her. That day, they didn't exchange numbers, but they met again the next week, and then again. Soon it became routine. Arav would sit with a poetry book, and Meera would join. She'd listen, and then they'd talk about random things, about why people think height defines attraction, why short boys are often laughed at and tall girls are seen as intimidating. They talked about family, about childhood nicknames, about dreams. He once asked her, "Do you ever feel too tall?" She thought for a moment. "Sometimes, but only when people make me feel like I don't belong." "And when do you feel okay?" "When I'm not being measured." That answer stayed with Arav. And she once asked him, "Have you ever felt less?" "Only when I compare myself to people who don't know me." That answer stayed with Meera. They became friends. The kind of friends who text without emojis, who sit in silence without awkwardness, who walk together even when others stare. One day, Arav invited her to his art exhibition. She hesitated. She didn't like crowds. She didn't like standing out. But she went anyway. As expected, people stared. A tall woman entering a gallery, taller than almost every man in the room. But Arav smiled when he saw her, and that made everything easier. His paintings were delicate. He had painted women reading, laughing, crying. He had painted people walking under trees. His last painting was different. It was of a giant tree, and beside it a boy looking up, smiling. Meera stood silently before it. "That's you, isn't it?" she asked. He nodded. "And that's you, the tree." She laughed softly. "So I'm a tree now?" He shook his head. "No, not just a tree. A presence. Steady, strong, unafraid." She didn't reply, but her eyes softened. Things didn't turn romantic overnight. It wasn't love at first sight. It was love that grew with time, without being labeled too early. Meera didn't expect anything. Arav didn't chase anything. But something started blooming between them. They went out more. Cafes, bookstores, parks. Once, a group of boys laughed at them in a cafe. One whispered loudly, "Is he her younger brother?" Another said, "That boy's got courage." Arav heard. Meera heard. They didn't say anything. But later, Arav asked, "Does it ever get easier?" "No," Meera said. "But I stopped shrinking myself. And I stopped trying to grow taller." They smiled. A few months later, Meera invited Arav to meet her parents. They were curious. They had questions. Meera's father was surprised at first. Her mother asked cautiously, "Is he serious about you?" Arav said, "I don't know how tall love is supposed to be, but I know how deep it can grow." That day, something changed. They didn't hide anymore. Yes, people stared. Yes, some whispered. But Arav would hold her hand openly, and Meera didn't bend her back to seem smaller. She once wore heels to a dinner, 6-inch ones. Arav looked up and said, "Now I need a ladder." She laughed. "Too bad, I'm not carrying you." He replied, "No need, just walk beside me. That's enough." And she did. One day, while sitting under a tree, Arav asked her, "Do you ever imagine us 5 years from now?" She smiled. "Sometimes I see you with messy hair, still reading poetry. I see myself towering over you, still reaching the top shelf." "And still okay with that?" "Very okay." And he said, "Then maybe I'll write our story." "You should." So he did. That story became this one. A simple tale. No grand proposals, no dramatic heartbreaks. Just a boy and a girl. One short, one tall. Both real. And both complete. Not because they changed for each other, but because they stayed who they were and still chose to walk side by side. Because sometimes love isn't about looking eye to eye. It's about seeing heart to heart.